tides of fate. The ocean shimmered under the golden rays of the sun, a vast expanse of mystery and beauty. Beneath the waves, in the kingdom of Narrated, an underwater paradise unfolded. Towering coral spires stretched toward the surface, glowing softly with bioluminescent hues of blue and violet. Grand seashell palaces, adorned with pearls and encrusted with shimmering gemstones, stood proudly amidst swaying kelp forests. Schools of silver fish darted gracefully between the structures, and luminous jellyfish floated like living lanterns, casting an ethereal glow over the kingdom. In the grand hall of the palace, its walls lined with cascading waterfalls and intricately carved columns of mother-of-pearl, Princess Serenia listened intently as her father, King Thalassor, delivered grave news. The humans have created a machine that disrupts our waters, a device that disturbs all marine life, the king said, his deep voice laced with concern. His words echoed through the grand hall, sending a ripple of gasps and murmurs through the gathered court. The sea folk, usually serene, now wore expressions of dread and disbelief. Some clutched their pearls in shock, while others whispered prayers to the ocean gods, their bioluminescent bodies flickering in agitation. Even the great manta rays that circled above seemed to sense the disturbance, their movements more erratic than usual. It is the work of a scientist named Professor Lennox, who operates from an aquarium on the land. We must put an end to his research, the king continued, his tone grave. A hushed silence fell over the crowd, the weight of his decree pressing upon them like the deep-sea currents. Serenia, ever the courageous daughter of the sea, stepped forward. "Let me go, father. I can blend in, gather information, and find a way to stop him." The king's frown deepened, his emerald eyes darkening with worry. "You do not understand the danger, my daughter. The land dwellers do not respect our kind. If they discover the truth about you, they will not hesitate to capture you." "I do understand, father," Serenia said firmly. "That is why I must go. If this machine continues to operate, it will not only expose us but harm all creatures of the sea. Someone must act." King Thalassor sighed heavily, rubbing his temple. "You are brave, my child, but bravery does not protect against human cruelty. Are you prepared for what you may face? For the lies, the deception, the risk of never returning?" Serenia took a step closer, placing a hand over his. "I am prepared, father. I have spent my life learning the ways of the ocean, of the land dwellers' world, through the stories of our scouts. I can do this. I will not fail." The murmurs of the court surrounded them like the gentle lapping of waves, filled with both apprehension and admiration. Finally, after a long pause, the king nodded solemnly. "Very well, but you must be careful. If they discover what you are, you will be in great danger." With a spell woven by the ocean's magic, Serenia took human form, her long silver hair cascading down her back, her bare feet sinking into the sand as she took her first tentative steps on land. The sensation was strange, the ground solid and unmoving beneath her, a stark contrast to the fluid, ever-changing embrace of the ocean. Each breath of air filled her lungs in a new, unfamiliar way, the crispness of it lacking the cool weight of water. She reached out instinctively, steadying herself against a wooden post as the world around her seemed to tilt. The sun, no longer filtered through the ocean's depths, felt warm against her skin, its golden rays, both invigorating and overwhelming. The sounds of the land were different too. No longer the gentle lull of waves, but the chatter of gulls, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the distant hum of human voices. Dressed in simple clothing, she took a hesitant step forward, her heart pounding with excitement and trepidation as she crossed the threshold into the human world, knowing that her mission had only just begun. The aquarium was unlike anything Serenia had ever seen. Enormous glass tanks lined the hallways, filled with creatures from the ocean, their eyes reflecting both curiosity and sorrow. The air smelled of salt and metal, the hum of filtration systems filling the space with an artificial pulse. Despite her unfamiliarity with human structures, Sirenia had prepared meticulously. She adopted mannerisms she had observed from land dwellers, mimicking the way they walked, spoke, and interacted. However, there were moments when she faltered, when she instinctively tilted her head to listen to underwater frequencies that did not exist in this world, or when she reached for raw fish at a dinner party, earning confused stares. One day a colleague jokingly splashed water at her and she froze, feeling an overwhelming urge to merge back into her true form. She quickly covered it up with laughter, but inside, her heart pounded. The moment had been too close and she could still feel the tingling sensation of her magic surging beneath her skin. What if someone had noticed? What if she had been exposed? She exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm. She had to be more careful. Her entire mission depended on it. The human world was not as forgiving as the ocean. With her vast knowledge of marine life, she impressed her supervisors, quickly earning their trust. Her responses were always measured, her curiosity framed as academic rather than instinctual. She memorized key scientific terms and protocols, effortlessly navigating through conversations with seasoned biologists. No one questioned her, for she seemed just like any other passionate marine researcher. She was hired as an assistant under the pretense of having a background in marine biology, a skill easily fabricated thanks to the knowledge she had about the ocean. Her mentor, Dr. Adrien Carter, was a marine biologist with a passion for preserving marine life. Unlike the other scientists, Adrien treated the creatures with kindness, often whispering soft reassurances to the dolphins, sharks, and fish that swam in their tanks. Sirenia observed him closely, intrigued by his every movement. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his physique strong yet refined, as though shaped by both intellect and discipline. His dark brown hair framed a chiseled jaw, and his piercing blue eyes, full of intelligence and warmth, studied the creatures under his care with deep reverence. His hands, though calloused from years of fieldwork, moved with precision and gentleness, treating every living being as if it were a fragile treasure. She admired the way he spoke, his voice steady and rich, filled with conviction whenever he defended the rights of marine life. Unlike the others, who saw the ocean's creatures as mere specimens, Adrien saw them as sentient beings deserving of respect. The way he interacted with them, murmuring soft words as he worked, fascinated her. She could sense his sincerity, his devotion. More than anything, she could feel his soul resonate with the love she held for the ocean. Sirenia found herself drawn to him, not just because of his knowledge, but because of his heart. Adrien was unlike any human she had ever encountered. He fought against the aquarium's harsh treatment of marine life, often butting heads with the director, Professor Lennox. These creatures deserved to be in the ocean, not in glass cages, Adrien had argued one evening. Sirenia watched him with admiration as he defended the creatures of the sea. They belong to the wild, not to us. Sirenia was careful not to reveal too much, but she found herself falling for Adrien even more. The way his blue eyes lit up when he spoke of saving marine life, the way he treated every living creature with respect, it was intoxicating. But danger lurked in the shadows. Professor Lennox, an aging yet cunning scientist, had begun to suspect her. He was fascinated with mermaids, obsessed with discovering the truth of their existence. His sharp eyes tracked Sirenia's movements with growing curiosity. She moved too gracefully, almost like the creatures she worked with, her intuition about marine life uncanny. He noted how effortlessly she interacted with the aquarium's inhabitants, how the creatures responded to her as if they knew her. Her knowledge was vast, almost too vast, as though she had lived among them. Lennox had long harbored theories about the existence of mermaids, and Sirenia's peculiar habits only fueled his obsession. The way she avoided prolonged time in confined spaces, her hesitation near their sonar-based equipment, and how her skin seemed to shimmer unnaturally under certain lights. All were signs he could not ignore. One night, as she was tending to the aquarium's main tank, the professor confronted her. "You're different," he said, his voice laced with intrigue. "You know too much about the ocean, about its creatures, and your presence. It's almost otherworldly." Serenia stiffened, carefully choosing her words. "I don't know what you mean, Professor. My knowledge comes from years of study and observation, just like any marine biologist." Lennox took a slow, deliberate step closer, his eyes gleaming with suspicion. "Oh? And yet, you move through this place as if you belong to the water itself. The creatures respond to you in ways I've never seen. Even the most cautious sharks don't shy away. How do you explain that?" Serenia forced a small laugh, feigning amusement. "Maybe they sense kindness, Professor. I treat them with respect. Perhaps they respond to that." Inside, her mind raced. Could he see through her facade? Every fiber of her being screamed at her to remain calm, to keep her breathing steady. If she faltered, even for a moment, Lennox would know the truth. She gripped the clipboard in her hands a little tighter, hoping he wouldn't notice the slight tremble in her fingers. The weight of his gaze bore into her, and for the first time she truly felt trapped, like one of the creatures behind the glass, observed, studied, waiting to be exposed. She forced herself to meet his eyes, willing them to hold nothing but steady confidence even as panic clawed at her insides. The professor's lips curled into a smirk. "Respect, yes, but even the best marine biologists take years to build that kind of rapport with animals. You stepped in on day one, and they swam to you as if you were one of their own." Serenia swallowed, maintaining her composure. "I've spent my life studying marine life. Maybe I just have a natural affinity." Lennox studied her in silence for a long moment, then let out a low chuckle. "A natural affinity indeed. Tell me, Miss Serenia, do you ever feel out of place here? Like the land is foreign to you?" Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I feel at home wherever the ocean is near, Professor. That's why I work here." Lennox's gaze darkened, his curiosity shifting into something more menacing. "Is that so? Well, let's put that theory to the test, shall we?" But the professor was not a fool. With the press of a button, the echo machine roared to life. A piercing sound rippled through the water, making Serenia collapse in agony. It was a frequency that only marine creatures could hear, a sound that sent pain coursing through her veins. "I knew it," Lennox exclaimed. "You are one of them." Before she could react, his guard seized her, dragging her toward the largest tank in the facility. Adrien, unaware of what was happening, heard the commotion and rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Serenia was thrown into the water, and as she gasped for air, the machine continued its assault, forcing her transformation. Gasps filled the room as her legs fused into a shimmering tail, her turquoise hair floating like sea foam around her. The water was her home, but in this glass prison, she was nothing more than a spectacle. "You're a marvel," Lennox whispered, pressing his hands against the glass. "And now, the world will know the truth." But Adrien would not stand for it. Adrien stormed into the control room, his heart pounding with urgency. The guards turned at the sound of his entrance, but he was already in motion. With a swift, practiced move, he dodged the first guard's grasp and delivered a powerful punch to his jaw, sending him sprawling to the floor. The second guard lunged, reaching for his radio, but Adrien seized his wrist and twisted it sharply, forcing him to drop the device before knocking him unconscious with a precise strike to the temple. Breathing heavily, Adrien rushed to the echo machine's control panel. His fingers trembled as he scanned the numerous buttons and switches, searching for the power source. Serenia's pained cries echoed through the facility, spurring him on. His mind raced, recalling the schematics he had glimpsed in the research lab earlier. Finally, he spotted the main power conduit. Without hesitation, he grabbed a nearby metal rod and jammed it into the panel's wiring. Sparks exploded as the circuits fried, and with a final flickering whine, the machine powered down, silencing its torturous hum. He turned toward the tank, his gaze locking onto Serenia, her body weak from the assault. "Hang on, Cyrenia. I'm getting you out of there." Then, with desperate determination, he found the emergency release valve for the tank. "Cyrenia, hold on," he called. She swam toward the opening as Adrien shattered the security panel. Water gushed from the tank, flooding the laboratory. Lennox screamed in fury, but his cries were drowned out as Adrien grabbed Cyrenia's hand, pulling her to safety. Alarms blared, but they didn't stop. Together they raced through the facility, dodging guards and security drones. Adrien led her to the research wing, where Lennox kept his work. Knowing they could not leave any trace of the machine's existence, Cyrenia summoned a powerful surge of water, sending a cascading torrent through the research wing. Sparks erupted from the computers as circuits overloaded, smoke curling toward the ceiling. Documents fluttered, swept up in the force of the water before becoming drenched and unreadable. The lab tables toppled, glass beakers shattering as the floor became an ankle-deep flood. Alarms blared louder, red emergency lights flashing frantically as the security system detected the destruction. Cyrenia and Adrien moved quickly, dodging falling equipment and bursts of electrical sparks from the failing machines. As the fire suppression system activated, spraying a futile mist over the spreading chaos, Cyrenia sent another wave of water crashing through the server room, ensuring that Lennox's work would never resurface. With a final determined glance, Adrien grabbed Cyrenia's hand. "We need to go, now," he urged, pulling her toward the exit as the lab descended into complete ruin. They sprinted through the flooding corridors, water rising fast around their ankles. Sirens wailed, and red emergency lights cast eerie shadows against the crumbling walls. As they rounded a corner, 2 guards emerged, blocking their path. Adrien didn't hesitate. He surged forward, using the element of surprise to knock one guard to the ground. The second grabbed his arm, but Cyrenia reacted swiftly, summoning a forceful wave that crashed into the man, sending him sprawling. Panting, Adrien pulled her forward. "We don't have much time." They pushed ahead, the exit in sight, but a sudden burst of sparks from a failing electrical panel sent flaming debris crashing in front of them. Cyrenia shielded her face, coughing from the acrid smoke. "There's another way," she shouted, pointing to a maintenance hatch. Adrien wrenched it open, and together they crawled through the narrow space, water following in behind them. As they finally emerged outside, the aquarium loomed behind them, its structure collapsing under the chaos. They had made it, but just barely. As flames and water consumed Lennox's life's work, they made their escape. Adrien led her to the harbor, his grip firm but gentle as they reached the edge of the water. Cyrenia turned to him, sadness and longing swirling in her oceanic eyes. "I must go home," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with unspoken emotions. She hesitated, her heart warring against duty. Adrien exhaled heavily, his hands trembling as he cupped her face. "You don't have to leave forever. There has to be a way." His voice was laced with desperation, as if willing the ocean to release its claim on her. "Stay, even just for a little while longer." Cyrenia swallowed hard, her fingers trailing over his jawline, memorizing the warmth of his skin. "If I stay, I endanger us both. My people need me, but I don't want to leave you." "Then don't," Adrien whispered, his forehead resting against hers. The moment stretched between them, heavy with longing. The crashing waves became a distant hum as their lips finally met. This was not a fleeting farewell, but a kiss of promise, deep and lingering, filled with everything they couldn't say. When they finally pulled apart, Cyrenia's eyes glistened. "One day when the ocean calls you, find me." With a final lingering touch, she turned and dove into the sea, her form disappearing beneath the waves. Adrien stood there, watching the water ripple where she had vanished, his heart aching yet filled with hope. He clenched his fists, unwilling to let this be their last moment together. The salty breeze carried her absence, leaving him feeling hollow yet determined. He vowed then and there that this was not the end. He would find a way back to her, no matter how impossible it seemed. The ocean had taken her away, but it had also connected them, and he would not let that connection fade. Over the coming days, he found himself lingering by the shore, his thoughts consumed by her. The memories of her voice, her touch, the way she moved with the water, everything about her haunted him. But in that haunting, he found purpose. He would dedicate his life to the sea, to learning its secrets, to following its whispers, until he found her again. Because deep in his heart he knew this was not the end of their story, but hope alone was not enough. He needed to find her. Determined, he spent years dedicating his life to marine conservation, traveling across oceans, learning the ways of the sea. He immersed himself in the rhythms of the tides, listening to the songs of whales, deciphering the secret language of dolphins, and tracking the mysterious migrations of creatures that called the deep their home. He studied ancient maps and followed the whispers of legends told by island elders, each tale fueling his belief that she was out there, waiting. There were nights when the ocean felt alive around him, as if guiding him closer, and moments when he swore he heard her voice in the crash of the waves. He would sit for hours at the shore, watching the moonlight dance on the water, wondering if she was looking up at the same sky. His longing for her never faded, but it was no longer just longing. It was a purpose, an unyielding force pulling him back to her world. On yet another expedition, Adrien set sail with renewed hope, though doubt gnawed at the edges of his determination. He had spent years searching, following fleeting signs and whispered legends, yet Serenia remained just beyond his reach. Was she even still waiting for him? Or had she moved on, accepting that their worlds were never meant to merge? Despite the questions weighing on him, he couldn't stop. He tracked an anomaly in marine migration patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if unseen forces were guiding him toward something or someone. The ocean had never lied to him before, and he clung to the belief that this time it would lead him back to her. As he ventured further, he noticed strange occurrences. Dolphins swimming in synchronized patterns leading his boat forward, bioluminescent jellyfish forming intricate swirling symbols beneath the waves. At night he dreamt vividly of Serenia, her voice calling him through the currents, guiding him toward an unknown destination. The deeper he followed these signs, the more convinced he became that this was no coincidence. At night, the ocean seemed to murmur to him, its waves carrying whispers that felt almost like words. Shadows beneath the water moved with an intelligence beyond instinct, guiding his course. On more than one occasion, strange lights flickered in the depths, vanishing before he could get a clear look. Even the stars above seemed to align in patterns that felt eerily deliberate, as if the universe itself was conspiring to reunite him with her. The ocean itself was leading him, whispering secrets only he could understand. Every shift in the water felt like a message, every ripple like a gentle nudge, urging him closer to a long-lost truth. His research vessel floated over a mysterious stretch of ocean, where strange currents swirled with an almost guiding force. He donned his diving gear and plunged into the depths, venturing into an uncharted cave system beneath the waves. The deeper he swam, the more the current seemed to push him forward, as if leading him to something, or someone. Suddenly, a strong eddy caught him off guard, twisting him through a narrow passage. His oxygen supply ticked dangerously low, and the crushing weight of the deep began to cloud his mind with exhaustion. Then through the haze, a radiant glow emerged. A familiar figure swam toward him, her turquoise tail shimmering like liquid moonlight. It was Serenia. "You found me," she whispered, her voice carried through the currents. Adrien reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. "I never stopped searching." With a knowing smile, she guided him upward, the water cool and soothing against his skin, its embrace both familiar and foreign. His lungs burned as they neared the surface, his body desperate for air, but the moment stretched in an almost dreamlike haze. As they broke through, Adrien gasped, drawing in the damp, salty air as relief flooded through him. His heart pounded, his breaths ragged as he blinked against the dim glow of the cavern. The walls shimmered with traces of bioluminescence, casting a surreal, ethereal light around them. Serenia watched him closely, her fingers lightly grazing his cheek, grounding him in the reality of their reunion. The water lapped gently around them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Adrien allowed himself to believe he had truly found her again. As they surfaced, she cupped his face in her hands. Then stay, if only for a while. Adrien, breathless and overwhelmed, nodded. Their lips met once more, this time not in parting, but in reunion. A kiss filled with the promise of a love that defied both land and sea.